The first debate of the fall campaign is in the books, but it only featured two candidates. Bob Stefanowski chose not to go. Ned Lamont was there, along with unaffiliated candidate Oz Griebel. And with us today to talk about this is Keith Phaneuf of the Connecticut Mirror and Kevin Rennie of Daily Ructions and the Hartford Courant. We thank you so much for being with us today. And first of all, Kevin, I'll begin with you. Did it hurt Bob Stefanowski by skipping this debate?
It did. First, he needs the practice because he's not very good talking about substance. Second reason is that he announced this week that he doesn't support the minimum wage, and he needs to explain that. Perhaps walk that back a little bit or somehow reassure people that he doesn't want us living in a state of nature in Connecticut. The third, and this I think as a practical matter may be the most important, is he needs to explain why he wants to abandon Eastern Connecticut and homeowners who are suffering from this natural disaster of crumbling foundation. Here's a guy who talks often and touts his experience with GE when it was in Fairfield years ago. GE got $139 billion from the federal government during the financial crisis 10 years ago. He doesn't seem to object to that, but he objects to helping the state lending a hand to middle-class homeowners who are suffering from really what is a natural disaster of crumbling foundations. And it just doesn't make any sense why he embraces the government saving GE and yet would give the back of his hand to Eastern Connecticut homeowners.
Keith, do you agree? Did it hurt him not going?
I agree. I think if you just look at the numbers, Bob Stefanowski won a Republican primary with something like 30% of the vote. You had a ridiculously small turnout in primaries, and Republicans are they even 25%, 29% of the electorate? In other words, a lot of people really haven't weighed in on him yet, and he's missing an opportunity to define himself. I think you can win a primary with sweeping statements like, I'm going to phase out the income tax, all empirical evidence aside, but things like Kevin was talking about, the crumbling foundations, he's got to, and the minimum wage, he's got to start explaining his positions more in depth on those issues.
This was a great opportunity for Oz Griebel to showcase himself because this is his first time on a venue to debate the Democrat one-on-one. Did he take advantage of it or did he blow it?
I thought his opening was inartful when he, instead of answering the question that was posed to him, he decided to read his biography. And I think that's a mistake. He was introducing himself to an audience. People don't know Oz. They don't remember him, for the most part, from 2010 when he made an unsuccessful bid for governor as a Republican. And he didn't seem very responsive to the question. He knew what he wanted to do, and it didn't matter what he had agreed to in advance. Also, at times, I found his answers to be incomprehensible. Both of them seem to ramble more than you expect two experienced candidates for governor to do.
Does that mean Ned Lamont won the debate?
I don't know if I'd go that far. I agree with Kevin that Oz stumbled coming out of the gate. I think his plan to introduce himself, it came across dry. Oz is very much a policy wonk, and so coming from me, I don't consider that a put down. But I think what happened was his nerves showed. Because he clearly, we were talking, I mean, he understands, like, he was able to dissect Bob Stefanowski's, again, proposal to phase out the income tax and just explain how the math doesn't come close to adding up. It's in the delivery that he still needs some polish on that.
What do we look for in these future debates? And Keith, I'll give you this first. And it doesn't appear that Oz Griebel will be in at least the next couple of debates. Right. So it'll be between Ned Lamont and Bob Stefanowski. What should we be watching for?
I think the first thing I really want to see is how they begin to define each other beyond the opening script, beyond you're an ally of Donald Trump, you've been endorsed by Donald Trump, and you're Dan Malloy's clone. Those work to get out of the gate. But there, and I'm going to go back for a minute to the crumbling foundations. In Eastern Connecticut, where that's a problem, you have not only huge pools of unaffiliated voters, but unaffiliated voters who traditionally have swung from election to election. Those are the folks who are going to need to hear more than just, you're just like Donald Trump or you're just like Governor Malloy.
Okay.
I think they need to explain what they would do about the $4.6 billion deficit that is on their desk, compliments of Dan Malloy, the day they take office. They absolutely refuse to. We were reminded of that in the debate this week, because when Ned Lamont really diverted and just talked a lot about property tax relief. Property tax relief is not going to do anything for that $4.6 billion deficit. And you can't move on to the other things you may want to do as governor until you solve that enormous problem. And they've been avoiding it.
But the problem is, and I agree with Kevin, nobody can really do that, perhaps Bob Stefanowski the most, because addressing that problem undermines all their tax proposals. You'll be incredibly lucky if you can get through the first biennium with just small tax increases. Now, when you're Bob Stefanowski saying, I'm going to get rid of over the next 8 years an income tax that brings in almost $10 billion, $9.7 billion, when you're Ned Lamont, who's offering property tax credits on the income tax that'll eventually give the middle class $400 million, how do you turn around and get into details about a 10 to 12% hole in the state budget with no ability to lay off state employees and hold on to these very generous promises?
The last two elections between Foley and Malloy in 2010 and 2014 were tight races. Did the debates help them or hurt? Were there moments where it shifted?
I thought they hurt Tom Foley. I thought Tom Foley was not prepared with the ferocious onslaught that he received on the debate stage from Dan Malloy, and I think it really threw him off. You know, it's Mike Tyson said, you know, everyone has a plan until they're punched in the face, and I thought Dan Malloy delivered some really powerful punches to Tom Foley 8 years ago and 4 years ago. I don't know that Ned Lamont and Bob Stefanowski have that sort of personality that they can do that. And if they try to remake themselves in order to do that, it may make viewers uncomfortable.
It's going to be fun to watch. The debate season is now underway. Keith Phaneuf, Kevin Rennie, we thank you so much for being with us today. When we come back, we'll meet the man chosen to run against Chris Murphy and welcome your comments either on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook.